I was enjoying our usual Sunday dinner at my parents' house when everything suddenly fell apart. Mom and I were discussing my recent career change when she erupted over my decision to leave my high-paying tech job for teaching. Her face turned red as she screamed, those words, I will never forget. Get out and never come back. So I did exactly that. I calmly walked out the door, got in my car, and drove away. What she did not realize was that I had been paying their mortgage for years. The silence lasted 2 weeks until Dad called panicking about the bank notice. If you have ever had to make a tough decision with family, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe as I share how I finally stood up for myself after years of financial manipulation. Growing up in suburban Chicago, our family seemed normal from the outside. My mother, Jessica, always maintained the appearance of a perfect household, while my father, Frank, typically avoided confrontation. I was the oldest child, with my younger sister, Allison, often playing peacekeeper during family disputes. From an early age, I noticed Mom's controlling nature and emotional outbursts whenever things did not go exactly her way. Dad would usually remain silent during these episodes, later telling me privately to just apologize to keep the peace. This pattern continued throughout my childhood and teenage years. I learned that the easiest way to handle Mom was to simply agree with her demands and expectations. By the time I left for college, I had become an expert at navigating her moods and avoiding her triggers. I studied computer science at University of Illinois and landed a great job at a tech company in downtown Chicago right after graduation. My parents were proud of my success, especially when I started helping them financially with small things, new appliances, car repairs, holiday gifts. But everything changed dramatically during the housing crisis 5 years ago. One night, Dad called me in tears, explaining they were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments and facing foreclosure. Without hesitation, I offered to help. Just until we get back on our feet, Dad promised, as I set up the automatic monthly payment of $2,300 to their mortgage company. What started as temporary assistance quickly became permanent. Despite both parents working, Mom as an administrative assistant and Dad as a sales manager, they never seemed to have enough money for their mortgage. Whenever I gently suggested they might take over the payments again, Mom would list all their other expenses or remind me of all they had sacrificed for my education. We gave up vacations and new cars so you could go to a good school, she would say. This is just your way of showing gratitude. After 5 years, I had paid over $130,000 toward their house. Meanwhile, I lived in a modest apartment, putting off my own homeownership dreams. My resentment grew, but family loyalty kept me trapped in this arrangement. Things began to shift when I met Sophia at a friend's wedding 2 years ago. She was smart, kind, and helped me see my family dynamics more clearly. As our relationship grew serious, we started discussing our future together, including finances. When I explained my arrangement with my parents, her eyebrows shot up in concern. "Damien, that is not normal," she said gently. "Parents should not expect their children to support them like that, especially when they are capable of working." Around the same time, my demanding tech job was taking a serious toll on my mental health. 60-hour weeks, constant pressure, and high-stress projects left me exhausted and depressed. After much thought and encouragement from Sophia, I decided to make a change. I accepted a position teaching programming at a local community college. The job brought a 40% pay cut, but offered something priceless: peace of mind and fulfillment. My mother was livid when I told her about my career change over Sunday dinner. "You are throwing away everything you worked for," she snapped. "What will people think? That my son could not handle success." I tried explaining how much happier I was helping students build their futures, but she dismissed my explanation as weakness. Dad looked uncomfortable but said nothing to defend me. The tension at our weekly family dinners grew unbearable after that. Mom would make pointed comments about money, asking if Sophia and I would downsize our wedding plans due to my reduced circumstances. When Sophia and I got engaged 6 months ago, Mom's behavior worsened. She criticized every decision we made about our wedding, especially when we opted for a smaller, more intimate ceremony instead of the lavish event she had envisioned to impress her friends. Sophia encouraged me to establish healthier boundaries, but years of conditioning made this incredibly difficult. "Your parents have made you responsible for their financial well-being," Sophia observed one night. "That is their job, not yours. We cannot build our future if we are paying for their present. I knew she was right, but breaking free from this pattern seemed impossible until that fateful Sunday dinner changed everything. The Sunday that changed everything started like any other. I arrived at my parents' house around 5 in the afternoon bringing a bottle of wine and flowers for Mom, a peace offering of sorts after weeks of tension. Dad greeted me at the door with his usual warm hug, while Mom called out from the kitchen that dinner was almost ready. Sophia could not make it, Dad asked as he took the wine. She has a work presentation tomorrow and needed to prepare. I explained, not mentioning that she had also grown tired of Mom's thinly veiled criticisms. We gathered around the dining table as Mom brought out her signature pot roast. The conversation remained superficial at first. Neighborhood gossip, the unseasonably warm weather, Allison's new promotion at work. I began to relax, thinking perhaps the evening would pass without incident. "So how are the wedding plans coming along?" Dad asked, helping himself to more potatoes. "Great," I replied, feeling on safe ground with this topic. "We found a venue we both love. It is smaller than we originally thought, but perfect for what we want." Mom's fork clinked loudly against her plate. "Smaller usually means cheaper," she commented, not looking up. "I suppose that is necessary now with your teaching salary." I took a deep breath, determined not to take the bait. "Actually, we prefer a more intimate setting. It feels more meaningful to us." "Speaking of your job," Mom continued as if I had not spoken. "Janet from my book club mentioned there might be an opening at her husband's company. Much better pay than teaching." "Should I have her husband call you Mom? I am happy with my job," I said firmly. "I have never felt more fulfilled than I do now helping students build their futures." She scoffed. "Fulfilled does not pay the bills, Damien. You have responsibilities." The implication was clear. My primary responsibility, in her view, was continuing to pay their mortgage. My chest tightened as years of suppressed frustration threatened to surface. "My career choice is not up for discussion," I stated, surprised by my own calm tone. "I made this decision for my well-being, and I stand by it." Mom's face flushed. "Your well-being? What about our well-being? Have you thought about how your selfish decisions affect us?" Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but remained silent. Allison stared at her plate, the familiar tension filling the room. "I am not being selfish by prioritizing my mental health," I replied, feeling my hands begin to shake under the table. "And I have thought about you. For 5 years, I have been paying your mortgage without complaint." The mention of the mortgage was like lighting a match in a room full of gas. Mom slammed her hand on the table, making the dishes jump. "So now you are throwing that in our faces. After everything we did for you, we sacrificed everything so you could succeed, and this is how you repay us, by downgrading your life and then complaining about helping your family." "I am not complaining about helping," I clarified. "I am pointing out that I have been supporting you financially for years while you criticize my life choices." Mom stood up so quickly her chair nearly toppled backward. "How dare you speak to me like that in my own home? You have become so disrespectful since meeting that woman. She has poisoned you against your family." "Do not bring Sophia into this," I warned, feeling a protective surge. "This is between us. There is nothing between us to discuss." Mom shouted, her voice rising to a shriek. "If you think you are so burdened by helping your parents, then get out, and never come back." The dining room fell silent. Dad and Allison stared wide-eyed between Mom and me, clearly shocked by the escalation. In previous arguments, this would be the moment I apologized, regardless of who was wrong. I would smooth things over, we would pretend it never happened, and the cycle would continue. But something had shifted inside me. Perhaps it was Sophia's influence, or my newfound confidence from my teaching position, or simply the accumulation of years of manipulation. Whatever the reason, I found myself calmly standing up from the table. "Okay," I said quietly. What Mom looked startled, obviously expecting my usual capitulation. I said, "Okay, if that is what you want, I will go and not come back." I collected my jacket from the coat rack, aware of 3 pairs of eyes following my every move. Dad half rose from his chair, his expression panicked. "Damien, she did not mean it," he began. But I raised my hand to stop him. "She did mean it, Dad. And for once, I am going to take her at her word. With dignity I did not know I possessed, I walked out the front door without looking back. Only when I was safely in my car, driving away from the house, did the emotions hit me. My hands shook so badly, I had to pull over tears, blurring my vision as 35 years of pent-up feelings broke through the dam. I called Sophia, my voice breaking as I explained what happened. Her immediate response was to offer to come meet me, but I needed time alone to process. "You did the right thing, Damien," she assured me. "Come home when you are ready. I am here for you." Those words, "come home," resonated deeply. Sophia's apartment had become more of a home to me than my parents' house ever was. For the first time, I felt the possibility of breaking free from toxic patterns that had defined my entire life. As I drove toward my future, a realization crystallized. Mom had told me to never come back. If I was never coming back, why would I continue paying for a house I would never enter again? The first few days after the blowout were eerily quiet. No calls from Mom, no texts, not even an angry voicemail. This was unusual. Typically, after our arguments, she would either expect me to call with an apology or she would reach out herself once her anger subsided, acting as if nothing had happened. By Wednesday, Allison texted me, "Mom is still fuming, but Dad is worried." "You okay?" I responded that I was fine, but standing firm this time. When she asked what that meant, I simply said I was taking Mom at her word. I would not be coming back. A week passed, then another. The automatic mortgage payment date came and went. After careful consideration and a consultation with a financial advisor who confirmed I had no legal obligation to continue payments, I had called the bank and stopped the automatic transfer. The advisor had looked concerned when I explained the situation. "Family financial entanglements can be complicated," she warned. "Are you prepared for the fallout?" I was not sure I was, but I knew this was a necessary step toward independence. The relief I felt seeing the $2,300 remain in my account was immense, and immediately followed by crushing guilt. What if my parents could not afford their mortgage? What if they lost their home because of me? Sophia reminded me that my parents were employed adults, fully capable of managing their own finances. "They survived before you started paying their mortgage," she pointed out. "They will figure it out now." Exactly 2 weeks after the Sunday dinner incident, my phone rang with Dad's number. I braced myself before answering Damien. His voice sounded strained. "We just got a notice from the bank about our mortgage payment. It says it was not paid this month." "I know," I replied, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "There must be some mistake. Can you call them and straighten it out?" "There is no mistake, Dad." I stopped the automatic payment. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds before he spoke again, his voice rising in pitch. "You did what? Why would you do that? Mom told me to get out and never come back. I am respecting her wishes." "Son, you know she did not mean that. She was just upset in the moment. She meant it, Dad. And even if she did not, it is time I stopped enabling this unhealthy dynamic. I have been paying your mortgage for 5 years. That was never supposed to be permanent." Dad's tone shifted from confusion to panic. "But we cannot afford the mortgage on our own right now. You know that. I am sorry to hear that, but that is not my responsibility anymore. You and Mom are both employed. You will need to figure out your finances like any other adults." The call ended with Dad promising to talk to Mom and get back to me. Later that evening, Allison called to inform me that a family meeting had been held, without me, of course, where Mom had declared I was trying to punish her, and Dad was frantically looking through their finances to figure out how to make the mortgage payment. Over the next week, the pressure campaign began. Dad called daily with updates on their financial struggles. Mom, still refusing to speak to me directly, enlisted relatives to plead her case. Aunt Judy called to tell me how disappointed she was in my behavior. Uncle Paul texted about the importance of family loyalty. Even my cousins were posting vague social media comments about ungrateful children. Only Aunt Susan, Mom's younger sister, who had always maintained her independence, despite Mom's disapproval, reached out with a different message. "I heard what happened. Good for you for standing your ground. Jessica has been using people her whole life." The pressure extended beyond family. Mom had apparently told her friends a carefully edited version of events, painting me as the villain who abandoned his parents financially out of spite. People from my parents' social circle, people I had known since childhood, sent messages expressing their disappointment. Through it all, I stood firm, though not without significant emotional turmoil. I started seeing a therapist to help process the guilt, anger, and grief that surfaced. Dr. Marshall helped me identify the unhealthy patterns that had defined my relationship with my parents for decades. "You were parentified at a young age," she explained, "made responsible for your parents' emotional and financial well-being in ways that were inappropriate. Breaking these patterns is extremely difficult but necessary for your own health." Sophia was my rock throughout this period. She never pushed me to cut ties with my family, but supported whatever boundaries I needed to establish. We redirected the money that had been going to my parents' mortgage toward our wedding fund and a down payment for our own future home. For the first time in years, I experienced what it felt like to plan my future without the weight of my parents' expectations and financial needs. I threw myself into my teaching, finding joy in helping my students discover their potential. The community college environment suited me perfectly. No corporate politics, no crushing deadlines, just the satisfaction of making a difference in people's lives. One night, as Sophia and I were discussing wedding plans, she noticed a change in me. "You seem lighter," she observed. "More confident." I realized she was right. Standing up to my mother had been terrifying, but it had also been liberating. I was no longer the dutiful son constrained by guilt and obligation. I was becoming the man I wanted to be, a man who set healthy boundaries and prioritized his own well-being. The realization was bittersweet. It had taken 35 years and a painful family rupture to begin this transformation. But as Dr. Marshall reminded me, growth often comes from our most difficult experiences. 3 weeks after stopping the mortgage payments, I opened my apartment door to find Dad standing there. He looked older somehow, the lines in his face deeper, his shoulders slumped. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I hesitated but stepped aside. This was the first face-to-face meeting since the dinner incident, and I was determined to maintain my boundaries. Dad sat awkwardly on my couch, declining my offer of coffee. "Your mother does not know I am here," he admitted. "But we need to talk about the mortgage situation." "There is nothing to discuss," I said firmly. "I am not resuming payments, but we cannot afford it, Damien. We might lose the house." I took a deep breath. "Dad, you and Mom make decent salaries. Where does all your money go?" His eyes dropped to the floor. "Well, there are a lot of expenses. Your mother's club memberships, the new kitchen renovation last year, the timeshare in Florida." "So you had money," I interrupted, "but you chose to spend it on luxuries while I paid your essential housing costs." Dad looked ashamed. "When you put it that way. That is exactly how it island. For 5 years, I have been subsidizing your lifestyle while putting my own future on hold." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "We never meant for it to go on so long, but it became convenient. Convenient for whom?" I asked, feeling a surge of anger. "I live in a one-bedroom apartment while paying for your four-bedroom house. I postponed buying my own home to keep you in yours. I worked a job I hated because it paid enough to support both my life and yours." Dad looked genuinely shocked. "You hated your job, but you were so successful." "Success and happiness are not the same thing, Dad. My teaching job pays less, but gives me purpose. And now, without your mortgage to worry about, I can actually afford to live my own life." "But family helps." "Family," he insisted weakly. "Yes, they do. But parents should not be financially dependent on their children unless absolutely necessary. You and Mom are capable of working and managing your money. You chose not to because I made it easy for you not to." Dad's expression hardened slightly. "So you are just going to let us lose our home?" I leaned forward, making sure he understood my next words clearly. "Mom told me to get out and never come back." Those were her exact words. "Words have consequences, Dad. You taught me that when I was little. Remember when I told Grandma I hated her cooking? You made me apologize and said I could not take back hurtful words once they were said." He winced at the memory. "Now Mom needs to learn that lesson. She cannot tell me to leave forever and expect me to keep paying her bills." "She did not mean it literally," Dad protested. "Then she should not have said it," I replied simply. "I am done being the family ATM while being treated with disrespect." That statement landed like a physical blow. Dad's face crumpled as the reality of the situation finally seemed to sink in. We sat in silence for several minutes before he spoke again. What would it take for us to repair this relationship? It was the first genuine question he had asked, and I appreciated the effort it must have taken. I need Mom to acknowledge how she has treated me. I need a sincere apology, not just because you need my money, but because she understands she was wrong. I need to know that if I ever have a relationship with you both again, it will be built on mutual respect, not financial obligation. Dad nodded slowly. And the mortgage? That is over, I said firmly. Permanently. You need to figure out your finances like the adults you are. When Dad left my apartment, he looked both defeated and thoughtful. I hoped our conversation had made an impact, but I was not counting on it. The next day, Mom called. I almost did not answer, but curiosity won out. So this is your revenge, she began without preamble. Punishing us financially because your feelings got hurt. This is not revenge, Mom. This is a consequence of your actions and words. I was angry. People say things they do not mean when they are angry. Then people should be careful what they say. I replied calmly, especially to someone they depend on financially. Her tone shifted to the guilt tactics that had always worked before. After everything we have done for you, all our sacrifices, this is how you repay us. By abandoning us when we need you, I have repaid any debt to you many times over. $138,000 over 5 years to be exact. That obligation is fulfilled. So that is it. You just cut off your family, no, Mom. You cut me off when you told me to get out and never come back. I am simply honoring your wishes. She sputtered in indignation, but I continued before she could launch into another tirade. If you want to have a relationship with me going forward, these are my conditions. You acknowledge your behavior was inappropriate. You apologize sincerely, and you accept that our relationship will no longer include financial support, or what she challenged, or nothing. We simply will not have a relationship. The silence that followed told me she had never expected me to stand firm. Her final words before hanging up were, "Then I guess we do not have a relationship." It hurt more than I expected, but I also felt strangely peaceful. The decision was made. The burden I had carried for years was set down at last. Allison reached out after Mom's call, concerned about the escalating situation. Mom is on the warpath, but Dad seems different, she observed. More thoughtful. He asked me some questions about how Mom treats people. Maybe this will be a wake-up call for both of them, I said. Not particularly hopeful, but willing to acknowledge the possibility. Over the next few months, my parents scrambled to address their financial situation. Through Allison, I learned that Dad had taken a weekend job to help cover the mortgage. They had canceled the country club membership and were trying to sell the timeshare. Mom was furious about these lifestyle changes, but the reality of their situation left her with no choice. The first holiday without my parents was strange but peaceful. Sophia and I spent Thanksgiving with her family, who had always treated me with genuine warmth and respect. There were no walking on eggshells moments, no passive-aggressive comments, just good food and genuine conversation. In December, I received a Christmas card from Dad. Inside, beneath the generic printed greeting, he had written simply, "I am sorry, Dad." No explanation, no elaboration, but it felt like a tiny crack in a very thick wall. My relationship with Allison grew stronger through this period. Without Mom's influence, she felt free to express her own frustrations with our family dynamic. I always thought it was normal, she confessed during one of our coffee meetups. But seeing how Sophia's family treats each other, and now watching you set boundaries, it is making me rethink a lot of things. As the months passed, I continued my healing journey. Dr. Marshall helped me process the complex emotions of establishing boundaries with family. Sophia and I moved forward with our wedding plans, creating a celebration that reflected our values rather than anyone else's expectations. 1 year after that fateful Sunday dinner, much had changed. I had completed my first full year of teaching, receiving excellent reviews, and the satisfaction of seeing my students succeed. Sophia and I were married in a beautiful ceremony attended by friends, her family, and surprisingly, my father and sister. Mom had declined the invitation, still unwilling to accept the new normal. Dad approached me at the wedding reception, looking healthier and more relaxed than I had seen him in years. The house is officially our responsibility now, he told me. We refinanced, scaled back, made it work. You were right. We needed to manage our own finances. How is Mom handling it? I asked. She is adjusting, he said diplomatically. Slowly, but she is adjusting. Having actual consequences for her behavior, island, new for her. We maintained limited contact after that. Occasional phone calls, holiday greetings. Mom eventually agreed to a brief lunch with me, where she managed a stiff acknowledgement that things got out of hand. It was not the heartfelt apology I had hoped for, but it was something. Sophia and I bought our first home the following spring, a modest but comfortable place that represented the future we were building together. As I placed the key in the lock for the first time, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was mine, earned through my work, my choices, my boundaries. The journey from dutiful son to independent man had been painful but necessary. I learned that true family support goes both ways, that love without respect is not really love at all, and that the family you choose can be more nurturing than the family you were born into. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself does not make you selfish. It makes you whole. When I look back at that Sunday dinner now, I see it not as the end of something, but as the beginning of my authentic life. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? How did it change your relationship with them and with yourself? Share your experiences in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others and yourself is to say no.